Hello, fellow game programmers. Today's tutorial is object pooling. Now, if you're anything like me, and in the videos that have been posted for this class, there's been a lot of instantiating and destroying objects, especially when it comes to working with projectiles, and so those come with a pretty high cost. So if you do that enough, if you do it with enough projectiles enough times, you call those operations, it'll start to have performance issues, and that is where object pooling comes in. Object pooling is a design pattern that allows you to reuse objects rather than constantly creating and destroying them, which not only improves performance but also enhances the efficiency of this game. In the tutorial that we're about to go through, I'm going to cover everything you need to know about object pooling, from its concept to the actual implementation in a simple Unity game. So, hopping into Unity here, we have a simple game. You can shoot projectiles, you can move around at the bottom, and once the projectiles are off the screen, like you can see in the top left, they will be destroyed. So they're instantiated at the point when they're fired when you click, and despawn when they are off screen. So to start, what we're going to do is we're going to make a new game object that will hold all of the bullets that we're going to pull together, call it bullet pool, and then we're going to add a new script to this object. Let's call it dynamic object pool. Heading over to Visual Studio, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make this dynamic object pool singleton pattern so that all other objects can access it through an instance. And so we do on awake, we check if the instance is null, and if it's null, then we set it to this. And that's basically just how you do a singleton pattern. So now we can do dynamic object pool.instance to get the dynamic object pool class. Next thing we're gonna need is the prefab, which I will rename later, but to make it more general. But the prefab for whatever you want to spawn every time. And you're gonna want a list of the game objects that are gonna be in the pool. So we can call that object pool if we want. And then the other thing we're gonna have is a starting amount that we can mess with. I'm gonna set it to 15. I'm actually gonna change it to 5 now, because I want to show how we can expand the object pool, which is why I have another variable that's called is expandable. So this object pool is going to be able to expand if it doesn't have enough objects, if all objects are already being used. And we set the start to 5 so that we can later on see the effect of having that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a method that will instantiate a new object in the pool. This is for populating the list, and then also when there's all the game objects are in use, we're gonna have to instantiate a new one if our pool is expandable. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna instantiate the prefab, which I had changed to object because I want it to be more general than bullet prefab. And then we're going to get a reference to this instantiated object so we can add it to the list in the pool. And of course we're going to set active to false because we don't want them showing on screen or anything, any physics or anything affecting them until we spawn them, or until we set them to active. Then we're going to add it to the list. Now, to initialize the pool, all the objects in the pool, we're going to go up to our starting amount, which we set to 5, and we're going to instantiate the object in the pool. Alright, So the next step is to make the method that actually gets a game object for the, whatever needs it to use instead of instantiating it. So like, for example, for for shoot bullet, it would instantiate it when the player clicks. So that would be when this method is called. So we want a for each loop that goes through each object in the pool. And for that object, all you have to do is check if it's active in the hierarchy. And if it's not active, then we give that object to the caller. Now, if we go through that whole loop and we haven't returned an object, then first we want to check if it's expandable, because if it's not expandable, we don't want to be able to expand the object pool. So if it's expandable, we call the method that we wrote earlier to instantiate a new object in the pool, and then we'll go to the last object in the pool, because that's the one we just added, and return that. And then we return null in the last case where it's not expandable and we have too many objects already, and the caller can decide what to do with that. So now we just have to replace every time we called instantiate and destroy. So in this shoot one, we called instantiate. So we get the pooled bullet from the dynamic pool instance find inactive object from pool. And then we want to set the game object to active. This is just for the the bullet behavior, and then we set the transform position to the bullet spawn point. And now when we're going to destroy the bullet, instead of calling destroy, we can just set it to inactive. So set active equals false. And so one last thing I wanted to do here was just set the parent of every object to the object pool, or the game object that holds the object pool, I guess. And so that's what I did in that part of the code. So let's test it out. After waiting for it to compile, there's one thing that I did miss which was actually put the bullet prefab in the dynamic object pool script, like in the inspector. And so now, as you see on the left, all of them are inactive, are 5 objects, and then whenever I click, it activates one of the objects. So I'm gonna spam click and see what happens, and then as you can see, one extra one got made. I'm gonna slow down the speed of the bullet here, so you can see the example of the pool expanding based on not being able to find objects. So yeah, I click a bunch of times, more objects get made, and now they're in the pool forever. So the starting size was 5, but since we made it expandable, and yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of object pooling. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I hope this is helpful.